Well, good morning to you all, and a very warm welcome back to another week on my allotment. And I arrived in the dark this morning and had a wander down the plot as the light began to build. First thing I noticed, all my water butts are full. I was up here on Friday, and we were away yesterday down to see my daughter and son-in-law. So yeah, came back up here yesterday. It was a miserable day in Chepstow yesterday. It was miserable when we left, and it was miserable when we got back. It's the school holidays. The weather's always rubbish in school holidays. Why everybody does everything in August? I know it's not August yet, but you know what I'm saying. Why everyone plans everything in August is utterly beyond me. After 14 years as a self-employed gardener, August is always the worst month for weather. And the reason I say that is it's in the middle of the summer, and you know, grass cutting is at its peak, and it's always wet, always, without fail. So yeah, I mean, there's no watering to be done today. What a relief that is. The water butts are full to the brim, in fact overflowing. Everything on the site has reached that point in the summer where it's all flopping and drooping. I'm going to cut some stuff back off the path today because everything's soaking. It's not raining at the moment, but it's rained hard overnight and everything's hanging with water, and every time you brush past something you get soaked. So on the plot it's a lot about hoeing, tying things in and harvesting. It's that fantastic time of year when all your work pays off and you're picking crops as quick as you can. And I spoke to Cheryl yesterday about the onions that have bolted, and we've decided that although it's not really the season for soups, rather than lose them, you know, it's meals for free, that we'd have a few onion soups. And we're going to try freezing onion. Never done that before. But onions are one of those crops that we're almost self-sufficient all through the year. But that period next year when the stored onions just start to go rotten, or, you know, they go off, that's when we you know, Cheryl in the past has had to buy a few onions. Not many, but buy a few. And if we can pull them out of the freezer and use them in all the, because onions are used in most dishes, I believe, then that would be an improvement. So I've got a couple of onion beds that they're all bolted, every single one, all from sets. So I'm going to start clearing those today and clearing the weeds associated with them. And that leads me on to another thing that I'm going to talk about today, and that is what I've learned about certain crops. I've been reflecting the last couple of weeks on what I've learned, what I have yet to learn, the things that I've got better at, the things I haven't quite mastered yet. You know, you're always looking to improve, aren't you, if you care about what you do, whether it's allotments or anything in life. And so a little bit of self-critique is a good thing. Doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up over it, but you should learn from your mistakes, learn from the good things, etc. So I might talk a little bit about some of those things. Some of it I've learned from my subscribers. I've had some wonderful comments in the past, really helpful. The reason I'm now growing onions from seed is because of what people who've watched my videos have said in their comments. So yeah, welcome along. I think we'll start. I'm guessing the sun is up, but there's no sign of it this morning. We'll have a wander down the plot and a little mooch about. Actually, I'll start here at the shed. And of course, you know, it's still July. I'm terrible with what dates are. It's the 20-something of July, I believe. And the fire's on, as you can see. But, you know, you think, why would you waste your time with a fire in July? It takes the chill off the shed. It gets me lots of hot water. The fire will be out by 8 o'clock, which is 3 hours away. Yeah, it's lovely to be in there. You can hear it crackling. The worms are shed up. I have to admit to having an old man's doze from time to time because it's so bleak out there. But yeah, the fires is a fantastic feature. And these solar lights, you just about make one out there, and there's one at the end of the shed. They're fantastic. I think they were about 26 quid for the two on Amazon. I've had them a considerable amount of time now, and I've mounted the solar panel on the other end of the shed facing west. They're blooming fantastic. I don't want to jinx them, but because it's now starting to be dark when I arrive, and it's lovely just to switch that on so I can see what I'm doing as I put all my stuff on the table, etc. Fantastic bits of kit. I would say, like all these other people do, I'll leave you a link below, but I have no idea how to do that, so I won't be doing that. Well, here at the picnic table, the dahlia, I'm sorry I don't know the variety, it's been with us for years, is in full flower now, and I'm taking those home regularly as the only genuine part of the allotment that has cut flowers. These zinnias are a real treat. We had zinnias on this spot last year and I enjoyed them so much that I've bought another packet and done the same this year. So they're fantastic, and they're sat right next to the pond, which after a month or so of very dry weather and having to continually top it up, I'm not having to top it up now, and it's at full capacity, and is an absolute joy. And I'm very pleased with this flower. I mean, it looks a bit bleak now because it's been smashed by the wind, high winds yesterday and heavy rain, but it'll pick up, I'm sure. Sweet peas have gone over. I've given up trying to cut all the seed heads off of that. But this end of the allotment is an absolute joy to sit and just watch the insects and the critters flying about and enjoying the pond. Still haven't found the wasp's nest. I'm in full propagation mode with the strawberries. Lots of work going on to propagate the plants that I need for the new strawberry bed next year. And probably more difficult to see in the one remaining strawberry bed. I've got pots scattered everywhere, making new plants, and as I see their roots come out the bottom of the pots, I move them off the bed and start to store them. I need 3 rows of about 10 plants, so I'm trying to make 30 plants. Part of the main drive for me this year has been successional sowing. As I said in a previous video, as you improve as an allotmenter, you should have backup crops ready to go in as you harvest others. And so it is that I've grown another tray of beetroot. You know, you can't go wrong with beetroot. It doesn't need a lot of looking after. It's incredibly healthy for you. It's an absolute stalwart of the plot. Here's my asparagus jungle, and I've only just noticed that. I'm so tempted to snip that off with a knife and eat it, but I've got to wait till next spring before I harvest. Can't wait for that moment. Well, midsummer, this is what the potato beds look like. These are all main crop Sarpo Mira, and not quite looking as large, but the second early Estima, I will start cropping those soon. Again, I think we're going to struggle to eat all the potatoes I've grown, but I can always take some to the shop. There are a few ripening tomatoes. I shall be watching this very closely for blight. In fact, now I'm looking closer, I can see a little bit of damage on individual tomatoes, but there's really not a lot I can do about it now, so there's no point worrying. But I haven't cropped any tomatoes yet. And this utter mess is a bed of red barren onions that I planted as sets back in October, and every single one of them has bolted. So this is what I'm going to start clearing up today, hopefully. And right next door, this is another example of how you should always try and keep the hoe moving. As these butternuts and gourd birdhouse move across the bed, I'd like to get the weeds chopped off so that they don't get a start. They get smothered by the large broad leaves of the butternuts and they don't get a chance to stick their heads through. So the hoe will be going across this ground today. In fact, next door, as my step over apple develops nicely, 2 rows of Sapo axona, and they need earthing up today. Most of the dwarf French bean plants have survived and have got away from the slugs, and again a little bit of weeding around the plants today would be beneficial, but it won't be long now with all this rain before we start harvesting French beans. The carrots have been a thorough success this year. I shall be picking some more today for Sunday dinner. Really pleased with that. More tomato plants, but nothing ripening yet. I have dug out quite a few of these kestrel potatoes, and they're in a potato sack at home in the garage to be used. I think I may harvest some more comfrey today. I've had to water the leeks a lot because of the lack of rain, but I shan't be able to do that now because they've had a real good soaking and they're thickening up beautifully, so very pleased with that. And as I said I would attempt, I'm managing to keep the pumpkin plants away from the fig so far, but it's absolutely a joy to watch as these pumpkin plants become monsters. And this, you know, this ground is utterly bare in May and June when the plants go in. And look at it now. I mean, there's still lots of black plastic to be seen, but I reckon another week or two and you won't see any of that. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I don't know what these two cucumber, or the cucumber plants, are going to make of all this wet, relatively cold weather. We'll have to wait and see. But we are now picking cucumbers. Cheryl's stopped buying them now. Won't have to buy them, hopefully, for another couple of months as we harvest these. But of course these do rely on hot weather, so it'll be interesting to watch because the forecast for at least the next 2 weeks is miserable. So we shall have to wait and see. Another success this year has been the blackberries. I've got them scattered all over the plot and we just can't pick them quick enough. I know we're having a blackberry and apple crumble today for pudding, so lots more picking to be done. And here's an example of just what you've got to try and keep on top of in the summer, as those inevitable summer winds give the plot a bit of a bashing. These are new raspberry canes from a plant that I propagated, and they're just flopping and dropping about and they need tying in, and some rather large weeds that are emerging. It just needs a little bit of care and attention, tidying up, tying in so it doesn't all get broken, because next year this will provide my raspberries, so a little bit of work to be done there. So I think a little less talk and a little more action, please, Martin. Actually, as I've just looked up and paid attention to what's around me, can you just see the red or orange tinge in those brooding dark rain clouds of the sunrise? 20 to 6. This pathway here by the compost heaps shows another problem I'm developing, and that is we haven't had any new wood chip delivered to site all summer, well, all year. So all this wood chip was put down last year, and the weeds are starting to come through it. They're getting a hold. So not only do I have to weed all the beds with the crops in, I'm now having to weed the paths, and I do this exactly the same. I run the hoe through, which of course doesn't cure the problem, but it's a war of attrition. So there's another job for me today. So we need some more wood chip. Unfortunately, we've lost contact with the guys who used to bring it, so I don't see that changing in the foreseeable future. Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I've taken the opportunity over the last week to sort of reflect on lessons learned, and in no particular order, and they only cover a couple of crops. What I find is most of my subscribers know a lot more about allotmenting than I do, but if this is of any help to anyone, then that's great news. But in no particular order, and only covers, well, 5 or 6 crops. The biggest lesson that doesn't refer to a particular crop, but just an overriding principle that I've decided to stick to, is every crop has a pest, at least one pest. So if you take carrots and parsnips, the carrot root fly, I have come to the conclusion that it is best to choose the varieties that have been developed to resist those relevant diseases. So for example, I developed or discovered clubroot on my plot very early on, 5 or 6 years ago, and ever since then, thankfully for me, growers have developed clubroot resistant varieties to all the brassicas, and I only grow them, and I put lime in the planting hole when they go out, and touch wood, I've never had a crop since that has been affected by clubroot. The carrot fly this year, I grew resistor fly and flyaway, and so far, as we move towards August, I haven't had any carrot fly problem on the carrots. We won't know about the parsnips till later in the year, but so far the news is good. So potatoes, I only grow blight resistant potatoes. Tomatoes, they're not all blight resistant, but I've got a lot of Crimson Crush on the plot here, and I'm hoping they'll survive this poor weather and come out the other side without blight. So that is my overriding principle, that where a variety exists that has been developed to resist these pests, they're the ones I choose as a default. Beetroot has always been a stalwart for us. We enjoy it on our salads. Cheryl does jars of it. We've started already. She's done 2 or 3 jars already. I multi-sow always, so I get a little clump of 4 or 5 beetroot. And I sow at 3 stages through the spring and early summer, so that we have crops all the way through. And any excess we put through the juicer. Cheryl's not keen on them because it does give it a rather earthy taste, but they are incredibly beneficial for your health. So she grumbles, but she drinks it. So yeah, that's beetroot. I've mentioned clubroot. Peas, I have tried to successionally sow the peas so that we can pick fresh through the summer. It has not worked. This second piece of Harris fencing with the latter sown peas is not cropping. They look like mange too, they're very flat, but they're not thickening up and filling out to create the peas themselves. I'll take a small picking today. I'm guessing I'll get enough for our tea, but we took a lot of picking off the first lot and not so off of this one. So next year I'm going to try sowing them all at once, grow them all at once, pick them all at once and freeze them all at once. So we've got a lot more peas, albeit frozen, but frozen is about as good as, other than eating them fresh off the plant, it's as good as it gets if you freeze them soon or quickly after picking. So that's what I'm going to try next year with the peas. This hasn't worked, trying to stagger the sowings and pickings. Onions, without a shadow of a doubt, the only way to grow onions is from seed. I don't mind dealing with the bolted onions today, and if we get some of them frozen then that'll be a result, but not a single one of my seed sown onions has bolted. So that's the way for me in the future. Yeah, so that's just a few crops. I will mention some others in another episode, but after this is 7th or 8th. I got this allotment in March 2017, so I've learned a lot over the last few years. I've got very good at growing some crops, others I've still yet to master, but that's the beauty of it. You learn, you know, I mean, Terry Walton, the Radio 2 allotmenteer, who's been doing it for 30 odd years, he says he still learns every year. So, you know, learning never stops, does it? But I do think it's important to pause, look back and reflect and learn a few lessons, and that's what I've done, I think. Getting the wood burning stove at home ready for action. Well, behind these peppers I've got a couple of trays of lettuces coming on, ready to take over from the ones in the beds. But these peppers, which are called Corno di Toro Rosso, coming on a treat. Just need them to start reddening up. There's a whopper there. Below, the garlic is drying. Nice lot of basil, which we're using weekly. And then the tomatoes themselves. A mixture of some plum tomatoes, and this year, rather than Gardener's Delight, I'm trying Sweet Million. They're certainly producing a lot of tomatoes, and they are starting to ripen up. So it's all go in the greenhouse. Something else that I have sort of mastered is keeping a record of which beds I have mulched and top dressed over the last year or two. I've tried to keep a journal to record what I do. I've failed at it miserably, but what I have managed to do is I numbered every single one of my beds on a simple pencil plan from 1 to, I think it's 26, and then I put the numbers down the left hand side of a page, and then I record. I don't expect you to be able to read that. I record what I top dress each bed with when I do it. So, for example, bed number 4 had a heavy top dress of allotment compost in October 22, and that was the last time it was done. So I know this autumn, when I start to drag out the leaf mould and my own compost, I know when that was last done, and I know which beds need it according to which crop, etc. So I keep a record of that, and I do find that useful, because obviously every time you top dress a bed you improve the soil, which is what it's all about. Well, I thought I'd read out a few quite interesting facts. And I've been using a bit of paper as a bookmark in the book. And I just read it. Didn't realise what was on it. It says, when you are born, you look like your parents. When you die, you look like your decisions. Maybe I'll put that there to remind me to live a more healthy and wholesome life. I'm not sure it's working. So, without further ado, 1 million plastic bottles are bought every minute. Do you know, I find it fascinating as I drive around Chepstow on doing my work. Everybody that's out jogging, and it tends to be mostly women, are all carrying plastic bottles of water. You know, some of them are the sort of plastic bottle you buy in a shop, others are the more permanent type, but they're all carrying water. I had a lifetime of running. Sometimes I used to go running in the Oman desert. I never carried water. I had a drink before I went, and I had a drink when I got back, and I was fine. Why do you have to carry water? It's very fashionable, isn't it? 7% of the microplastics in the sea come from the paint used for road markings. In 19th century Paris, it was fashionable to take turtles for walks on a lead. In 14th century France, it was a capital offence to wear stripes. In the 1910s, there was a US baseball team made up of death row prisoners whose executions were delayed so long as they kept winning. No pressure. The first punch Mike Tyson ever threw was because someone killed his pigeon. 18th century actor James Quinn killed a fellow actor in a disagreement over how to pronounce the name Cato. I hope I pronounced that right. In 1871, an Ohio lawyer was killed when he accidentally shot himself, demonstrating how a murder victim might have accidentally shot himself. In 1994, a convicted murderer in England was given a retrial after it was revealed that his jurors had consulted a Ouija board. I've only ever come across Ouija boards when I was an apprentice at the Army Apprentice College here at Chepstow. So I was, 16, 17 years old. I never did it, but all the young lads who seemed to know about it were absolutely petrified of the things. I don't really know anything about them. In 1474, a rooster was put on trial in Switzerland for laying an egg. Well, that would fit in with today's trans debate, wouldn't it? No woman in Britain has ever been convicted of stealing a bird's egg. After the Queen, the first living person, that dates the book, doesn't it? The first living person to appear on a British postage stamp was Roger Taylor, the drummer from Queen. They were obviously trying to keep a Queen theme there. Of all dog breeds, Pekingese are the most genetically similar to wolves. You wouldn't guess that in a million years, would you? Quite interesting. Well, once I got in amongst it, it wasn't as bad as I thought. These are the ones that have bolted, and we'll chop them up tonight and freeze them. But there was a few there that haven't bolted, and they're a modest little size, so I'll dry them and hopefully store them. So not as bad as I thought. That's one of 3 rows in that bed. It's hard work. Right, back to it. Well, that's 2/3 of the bed cleared, and it's left me with this. So these haven't bolted and these did. So the ones that haven't bolted I'll take home and start drying off in the greenhouse, and the ones on the right we'll peel and chop tonight and freeze. So there's my homework. And when I say my homework, I really mean Cheryl's homework. Another wonderful crop. It does mean lots of work when I get home. Well, nice long day on the plot. Cheryl came up this afternoon. Unusually, she came up, had a coffee, we sat, chatted, relaxed. There was nothing for her to do, which is nice. Sometimes she gets up here and it's straight into the picking, but the blackcurrants are finished now, so it was just nice to sit and chat. I also took some time to make some blueberry plant cuttings, and we'll see if they take. But it's worth the effort, isn't it, to see if you can get plants for free. Yeah, really good day on the plot. You just saw the harvest, so a lot of work when I get home. She relaxed on the plot, but when we get home we've got to do those onions and freeze them. But yeah, really good harvests. It's all going extremely well. I'm pleased to report that I've had a good hunt around the pumpkin plants. I've got some old tiles that I've been slipping under the pumpkins to keep them off, well, they're not on soil but off the membrane. And I've got some good sized pumpkins developing, and so far, touch wood, no rat nibbles. So yeah, really good productive day on the plot. It's all looking good. Lots more weeding and hoeing, you know the score. Little and oft, do it little, do it often. That's just not how I do it. I think you do lots and you do it all the time. It's the only way to keep on top of it. So yeah, really happy with the way it is at the moment. We're away with the caravan next weekend, so it'll be 2 weeks till I post another video. So please do leave a comment and leave a thumbs up. Thank you to all those who've stayed with me and subscribed. I really do appreciate it. And all being well, I'll see you in a fortnight. So if you're going on holiday, have a good time. If you're not, have a good time anyway. Until next time, take care. See you then. Bye.